Hey guys, and welcome to the Retro Cave. Today we have a Home Brew deck profile video for you today featuring Sceptile Delta Species EX and Flygon Delta Species. Right now I call this deck Sceptile Delta Box. It features Latios pairing along with the Sceptile EX Delta Species and Flygon Delta Species. However, after this deck profile, I'm going to share with you my thoughts on how this deck could adapt and evolve in the future. With that being said, let's get right into the Pokemon of this deck. So to start things off, we have 4 Holland's Castform. Holland's Castform for beginners out there is a great card. It's a staple in a lot of 2006 and 2007 decks because it's a good setup Pokemon with its attack Delta Draw, but it also acts as an energy card, basically 2 Rainbow Energy when it's attached to a Pokemon. Go ahead and read the effect on your own so that we don't have to spend a lot of time on each card individually, but essentially this card has a dual purpose of setting up early game with Delta Draw, drawing a card per turn per Delta Species Pokemon on your bench, and then later in the game you can use it as an energy card. Alright, for the list's purposes, run 4 Trico Delta Species and then 2 Grovyle Delta Species. They don't really do much besides evolve into Sceptile. They do have some usable attacks, but really they don't come, I guess, in handy very often. Next we have 2 Sceptile RS. So this card was reprinted from Ruby Sapphire, its original printing in Pop Series 4, but good luck finding that art of the card. Trust me, it's very hard to find. So we're just using the Ruby Sapphire art of the card. And the main focus for this card is Energy Trans. Being able to move grass energy around at free will is very nice. And you can also move Holland's Castform with this card, which is extremely helpful. So unfortunately there's no cards like Max Potion that you can do the classic combo of move energy, heal, move it back, but it still comes in handy when something's about to die to be able to get the energy off of the Pokemon and then switch into something else. Next we have 2 Sceptile EX Delta Species. So this is the main attacker of the deck, so to speak. It's not always a good attacker early game because Power Revenge gets more powerful as your opponent takes more prizes. However, Extra Liquid can really come in handy early game to disrupt the opponent, can make your opponent's Pokemon EX attack with 1 extra colorless cost. Be mindful that it also applies to you. However, it's simply a good 2-shot attacker, and then on occasion it can become a 1-shot attacker. But we really use it for the Extra Liquid body being able to shut off Pokemon EX powers and then being able to disrupt their energy attack costs. Alright, so next we have the other main focus of the deck, which is a 2-1-2 Delta Flygon line. Delta Flygon, the main focus here, is used as an energy acceleration tactic with Delta Supply. Now, it can only attach a basic energy card or a Delta Rainbow card to a Delta Species Pokemon. However, you can, of course, use Energy Trans to then transfer from a Delta Species Pokemon to a non-Delta Species Pokemon, if that's what you need. In most cases, that's going to be Latios Star, which we'll see later on in the list. Swift is also handy. It's simply a way to get through wall Pokemon since it gets through any effects of the defending Pokemon. And then double resistance is also very nice, especially against Lightning, since Lightning is pretty popular in this format, seen in Rayquaza EX Delta Species and Jolteon. Next is going to be Chimeco Delta Species. It's a very underrated card in the deck, but it's probably, in my opinion, the most important support Pokemon besides Flygon Delta. And this is because it's the main energy recycling of the deck. We have Holland Farmer in the deck. However, Holland Farmer is a really inefficient way to recycle energy because you put it back to the deck and then you have to go find it again. Delta Support, while you can only use it when you've used a Holland Supporter for the turn, comes in handy because most of the time that's the type of supporter you're going to be wanting to use. You can actually just make the Holland Supporters essentially free because the discard cost is going to be a grass energy, then you're just going to get right back with Delta Support. But if you didn't happen to use a grass energy to discard for the Holland Supporter, then you can get another grass back and then use that for Flygon. So a very, very good card. Alright, next we have sort of the Latios pairings. I'm going to exclude this one, by the way. This is a proxy for Latios Star, but I'm going to put that aside for a second because it actually doesn't go with these pairings. because of the naming Latios Star. So each of these Pokemon have a combination with Latios, Latios, Latios EX, or Latias EX. The thing is, Latios Star is none of those, so it doesn't get any of the effects from this combination. So going through these one by one, the baby Lati pair is essentially to block evolved bodies on your opponent, but also to provide secondary attackers. Now, I know Dragon Claw for 40 or Psychic Force for 80 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're hitting for weakness and you have double resistance and it's a non-EX attacker, these things can be important and they can be really key momentum swings in certain matchups, especially since Psychic Force when the Delta Aura body is turned on, it's only a 3 energy cost for 80 on a basic Pokemon, which is pretty efficient. And then again, double resistance is very handy. So Latios has double resistance to grass and to fighting, and Latias, in my opinion, has the better double resistance in psychic and fighting. Lastly, Latios EX Delta Species. This is the best one of the trio because it gives free retreat to all of these, so it makes them a free floater, a pivot Pokemon. But Ice Barrier 30 and then being immune to EX's next turn. That's really the main focus of this entire group. Being able to simply slow the game down and build up while you're hiding behind an Ice Barrier. That's the main focus of this trio. So then going into Latios Star, this is just my fun proxy for Latios Star. I only have 1 copy, and it's great to have some fun proxies in your decks for things like Gold Stars. I think it creates a way to add some extra creativity to your lists. So Latios Star, despite not working with that grouping, still a great card to run. You know, this is anyone who's played this game enough knows that the Gold Stars, most of them have really, really good attacks. Shining Star, being able to pretty much one-shot any stage 2 in the format, is just incredible. It also has double resistance, which is great. But more importantly than that, it has a grass energy cost, and that's why we're using it in this list, because we already have the energy needed for one of these 3 energy costs, and then Holland Castform is going to take care of the other 2. So that's the main reason why we use this Gold Star instead of others for any beginners watching out there. Another piece of the Delta box of this deck is this Blastoise Delta Species. This is a really fun card. It's mainly used for its ability to null weaknesses, so it nulls all your Pokemon's weakness while they're active. However, I want to point out this incredibly underrated Enraged Linear attack. This format, it really suffers from not having POW hand extension that we had in 06. There's a lot less ways to bring up Pokemon that you might have damaged early in the game and then destroy them, so, you know, there's Pokemon reversal, but sometimes you don't want to rely on coin flips. So Enraged Linear Attack, it's essentially a linear attack that gets more powerful as Blastoise takes more and more damage, and you can put its 10 per damage counter on Blastoise onto anything on the board. So since you have 110 HP, typically you're going to be able to put a lot of damage on the board with that attack. Mew is the last Delta Pokemon in this deck, and this is essentially a baby Mew Gold Star, so it's not able to copy anything on your opponent's board, but Copy is still able to copy any of your opponent's defending Pokemon's attacks, so whatever your opponent has active. And Fire typing is great against things like Meta Knight or Scizor, but essentially this card is good because it's very, no pun with Mew intended, it's very versatile. This is just a great card to have in a lot of different situations, and it's one of those things that you can easily search out if you feel a good use for it, but if you don't have a good use for it, then there's no need to put this on the bench. Last Pokemon of the deck is Holland's Magnemite. This card serves a very specific purpose, which is that it's a way to get an energy card off of Holland's Holland Mentor that's not Castform, that you can immediately attach to a Pokemon. So let's say you have Holland's Castform, or you have access to it, you have a Delta Pokemon or 2 on your bench in your early turns, but you don't have a basic energy in your hand, you just didn't draw one. Well, you can Holland Mentor for this card, attach it to Castform, and then you can get your Delta draws going. So a lot of experts out there, you already know this combo, but for beginners out there, it's good to have a card like this in your deck for those kinds of situations. Alright, so those are the Pokemon of the deck, and now let's move on to the trainers. Okay guys, so trainers in this deck, most of them are pretty simple. We're going to start out with Holland Mentor. This is basically your Bridget, your setup card early in the game. It's great early in the game, but a lot of people who have been playing for a while out there know that Mentor is also good mid to late game, and that's because it can get things like Holland's Cast Form. So this card not only is a good way to get your evolution line set up, but it's also a good way to get energy mid and late in the game. Next we have Holland Scientist, Holland Farmer, Holland Researcher, and Holland Adventurer. So basically just almost the entire Holland package. So Scientist and Adventurer are strictly draw options, so I'm really not going to go into those much. And then Researcher simply allows you to search out any Delta Species, Pokemon, evolution or not, in your deck, so it's a great way to get set up. Unfortunately, it can't search out Sceptile, Ruby Sapphire with Energy Trans, because it's not a Delta Species Pokemon. So because we don't want to fit in 3 Elms in this list just for that, since that's not necessarily an integral part of the strategy, it's just a really convenient one, we don't have an Elms line in this deck and we just go with Holland Researcher, and we hope to draw that Sceptile RS. And then Holland Farmer is just your only recycling option. I really wish, as a lot of people probably do, that Pokemon Retriever was still legal in this format, but unfortunately it rotated after 06, so we have to deal with Holland Farmer, and that's just the way it is. Lastly, for supporters, we have 1 Steven's Advice and 1 Scott. Steven's Advice isn't as good in this format as it was back in 04-05. There's a lot of reasons for that, so I won't go into that to save time, but it's always good to have a simple straight draw option that doesn't require you to discard. And so we're just going to run 1 Steven's Advice for that. Scott is here because sometimes you need to net cards in your hand, and you also need a way to search stadium cards. Now this deck isn't really reliant on stadium cards, but early on in the game, getting Scott and then being able to just search for 3 supporter cards that are going to be your next essentially 3 turns of the game is really powerful, especially in a format that only has 1, maybe 2 reliable ways to shuffle your hand. So Admin is gone. There's really only Vaporeon and a couple other niche options to shuffle your hand away. So this is a really good card to have in this format. Moving on, we've got 4 Holland Transceiver. For beginners out there, this is a consistency card. It's really just a Versus Seeker on steroids, being able to get a Holland supporter from deck or from discard pile. So ditching a Holland supporter early on, you might be wondering, why are we only running 1 Holland Researcher, 1 Holland Farmer, 1 Holland Adventurer, etc. It's because we can just get them back from discard pile with this card. 4 Rare Candy, I don't think I really need to explain Rare Candy. You have stage 2 lines, you need Rare Candy. 3 Windstorm. This deck does suffer a little bit from Giant Stump if it's not played on your terms. But really, Windstorm is just a good card to have to combo with your own Giant Stumps. So Giant Stump is just a great card when it's played on your terms, when you want it played. For those who don't know, Giant Stump is essentially limiting the bench size to 3 on both sides. So you can play this in 2 ways. The aggressive way to play this is to get Flygon, Sceptile, another attacker on the board, and then Stump, so that you have all your setup ready to go. You have a Pokemon that can provide energy acceleration, you have attackers, and so then you have everything you really need. So it's time to Giant Stump and prevent your opponent from maximizing their board. Another way to use it is when you have the Latios lock going on, where you just got Latios EX, Ice Barriering. Maybe you have the Baby Lottie blocking some important Pokebody, or you just have Sceptile EX Delta Species blocking EX Pokepowers. This is a good card to play as a defensive, slow down the game strategy. And then when you don't want this on the board anymore, you can just Windstorm it away yourself. Another good thing about this is that some setup Pokemon, you might want them at one point in the game, but then they become a nuisance on your bench, so you can Giant Stump, clear them away, Windstorm, and now you've got 2 bench spaces to work with. Lastly, just a Warp Point and a Switch. Really straightforward. I feel like most decks need a switching option. Not everyone would agree with that for every deck, but in my opinion, this is something that most decks really need. Alright, so for energy cards, it's really simple. We've just got 8 grass energy. You can argue with me about what the best art of grass energy is to run. I personally don't know myself. If you have any suggestions, let me know. But this is what I've got so far. Now keep in mind, this isn't the only energy card we run, obviously, because we had just talked about, if I can find it, on the cast form. So, you know, 8 energy cards might not seem like a lot, especially for old decks. For beginners out there, you really run, at this point, 8 plus 4 of this, plus 1 Holland's Magnemite. So, in effect, you're running 13 energy cards when you account for all that, plus you have Holland Farmer to recycle up to 3 basic energies and up to 3 Pokemon, which could include Holland's cast form. So you have ways to get that back. Alright everyone, hope you enjoyed that list. This was the Sceptile Delta Box Homebrew deck profile. Now, my final thoughts on this deck are that it's very good and it's got strong potential. Right now, we're featuring a lockdown card in Sceptile EX Delta Species, along with strong energy acceleration and movement with Flygon and Sceptile RS. This combo in particular between Flygon Delta Species and Sceptile RS seems very strong, and I'd like to continue keeping that in the future. Where this list could vary is with the Latios and other Delta Species Pokemon such as Blastoise Delta Species and Mew Delta Species. These cards could change in the future, and it depends on your playstyle in my opinion. For example, you could build a more aggressive build of this list. You could feature attackers that are simply stronger in certain matchups depending on what your personal retro meta is, such as what decks your friends like to play in 2007, or what you think is going to be featured at a hosted 2007 retro tournament online or eventually in person. Either way, in the Retro Cave, our 2007 decks tend to be very spread heavy and very lock heavy. It's simply our playstyle. However, playstyles don't always match everyone's personal opinions, so like I said, in the future I'd like to see some adaptation of this list. In fact, we'll be doing a follow-up list to this deck in the near future. So we'll keep you posted with how we adapt this deck as we test it further and go along. We encourage your creativity to shine through here. Please share it publicly and with us any changes you make to this list and any ideas you have to make it better or to fit your particular playstyle. We love to see that, and we love to see that community interaction and creativity. If you like this homebrew video deck profile, please like and subscribe, let us know what you thought about it, and be sure to keep posted for more homebrew deck profiles and other content such as Gold Star interviews with big retro players and our tournament results. Peace out guys, and we hope to see you next time.